He is one of a kind. I feel very lucky to share a stage with him, so all right. So as you can tell, my voice is a little verkackt. My voice is failing me. I have a cold or something, but I have cough drops at the ready, and I have water, and you won't hold it against me if I start getting really screechy, right? I can just make gestures for a while if you want. Okay, so here's how it's going to go. I will try to forget that there are this many of you here. When I do the TV show, I know that intellectually I know that there are people watching, but I can't see you at all. So being able to see you here is kind of freaky. So maybe I'll take off my glasses. I am not an expert on war or on the military. I do politics is my thing. And I have written this book about the politics of going to war and of not going to war. And I want to talk about this tonight, but I recognize that this isn't the end-all be-all of things that you guys might want to talk about. And so I'll start by read a little something from the book, I'll talk a little bit about the book, but then when we do questions, we'll take questions on anything. Most things. We will leave the yard work story where Senator Cleveland You know, I'm about to turn 40, turning 40. Is better than the alternative. But I've been thinking about being old, because 40 is barreling down on me like a train. And I particularly felt extra old, extra fast when I started trying to promulgate among my friends this idea that we all ought to know who our birth president is. Right? I mean, you have your zodiac sign, it's like the month and the day that you were born. I'm an Aries. You might know the Chinese year in which you were born. I was year of the ox, which makes me a ram ox, which tells you what it's like to have an argument with me at home. No. But I feel like as Americans, especially like kind of civics dorks Americans, like, oh, who was your birth president? That's a way to make yourself feel really old. Because you could be like 68 years old and your birth president is FDR. And so I realized that my birth president is Nixon. Jesus Christ. He was not my childhood president. He was gone within about a year of me being born. But still, it's weird to think about your birth president. But so, in terms of this first thing that I'm going to read, imagine that your birth president is Poppy Bush. Imagine you were born in 1990. Put yourself in the mindset of somebody who didn't know Ronald Reagan. So you are a high school senior in 2007. We are 4 years into the Iraq War and 6 years into the Afghanistan War. If you are feeling a call to patriotic duty, a sense of adventure, thinking about the training opportunities offered by a career in the U.S. Armed Forces, where do you tell your recruiter that you would like to end up when you sign up? Probably not in a missile silo in Minot, North Dakota. In the post-9/11 era, who would want the job of sitting through the nuclear winter on the high plains, running maintenance on the 35 B-52s, guarding the silos that housed 150 giant and largely untested intercontinental ballistic missiles, babysitting the hundreds of smaller nuclear warheads stored in soft-topped bunkers like canned fruit shelled during a tornado shelter? Consider page 13 of a recently classified report from 2007 on the care and feeding of our nation's nuclear weapons at Barksdale Air Force Base in Shreveport, Louisiana. Among the recommended improvement areas: number 1, corrosion on numerous H-1388 storage and shipping containers. Ouch. Number 2, forward missile antenna sealant is delaminated. Number 3, numerous air-launched cruise missiles have fungus on leading edge of wings. So while our nuclear-armed cruise missiles were growing leading-edge wing fungus in the subtropical moisture of Louisiana, other U.S. military flying hardware at the same time was having rather the opposite problem. In the words of Defense Industry Daily, they were, quote, about to fly their wings off, and not just as a figure of speech. In 2006, the Air Force embarked on an emergency upgrade of our nation's fleet of C-130 aircraft. After heavy service, moving cargo and flying combat missions as retrofitted gunships, these huge planes' wing boxes were failing. The wing box is what keeps the wings on. It's what keeps the wings attached to the fuselage of the plane. So you can take your pick of your maintenance priorities, American taxpayer. Wings falling off enormous gunships in the Middle East and Central Asia from constant use in the longest simultaneous land wars in U.S. history, or sedentary nuclear missiles in Shreveport growing fungus. Nukes and their auxiliary equipment were generally designed to have a lifespan of about 10 to 20 years. Constant manufacturing and modernization were the assumptions back in the glory days. But by the start of the Barack Obama presidency, some of our nuclear hardware had been in service for 40 or even 50 years. Bad enough that the missiles were growing wing fungus and storage containers were rusting through in Shreveport, but at least those problems were mostly maybe solvable with a little Lysol and Rust-Oleum. For the more serious nuclear maintenance issues, we had by then started shuffling money into a new program. It's called the Stockpile Life Extension Program, which I think means that the acronym is pronounced SHLEP. I don't think they pronounce it right. Not something that good, right? SHLEP is essentially a program of artificial hips, pacemakers, and penile implants for aging babies. How would you like to be responsible for operating on a half-century-old nuclear bomb? How many nuclear weapons does our country need? How many nuclear bombs does the United States need to complete every conceivable military mission in which we would use them? For context's sake, you know the explosion at Hiroshima, right? An attack with one of the nuclear weapons we've got today would cause an explosion that's about 10 times the size of the one at Hiroshima. So that's your base unit. Can you imagine us setting off 2 such bombs now? How about 5 of them, each 10 times the size of Hiroshima? How about 15? How about 50 of them? What do we imagine would be on the list of 50 targets for those 50 American nuclear blasts, each 10 times the size of Hiroshima? You get to 49, what's still on the list? Our current arsenal of nukes is about 5,000 weapons. A senior defense official told me in 2011, we don't have any enemies in Congress. We have to fight in Congress to cut programs, not keep them. And those are basically the only fights the Pentagon ever loses. To paraphrase Ronald Reagan, plagiarizing Senator James Burns, talking smack about government bureaucracy, if you want to achieve immortality, see what you can do about getting yourself turned into a Pentagon program. You may eventually grow wing fungus, but you will never die. The nuclear weapons complex, the counterinsurgency nation-building apparatus, now our new fleet of $20 billion worth of mine-resistant, ambush-protected vehicles with V-shaped holes to disperse the energy from bombs. We built them and we own them, but we, in many cases, are just looking for ways to use them. The tasks that we assign to our service members are hard enough without asking them to get their work done in the world's largest organization, dragging around decades worth of clattering battle rattle in the form of defunct and deathless programs. We all have an interest in America having an outstanding military, but that aim is not helped by exempting the military from the competition for resources. With no check on its growth and no rival for its political influence, the super-funded, super-empowered national security state has become Leviathan, and we are not stronger for it, we are weaker for it. a pacifist. I have a lot of respect for pacifism. I have a bunch of nuns in my family, which makes me particularly sympathetic. I think that pacifism is a mature, fully cognizant